Rain hammered the docks like broken glass, waves slapping against the wood with hollow finality. 36-year-old Caleb Morgan, single father and dockworker, was finishing a late shift when he saw her, a barefoot woman curled beneath a flickering lamppost, soaked to the bone and trembling like she'd run out of places to hide. He dropped the wrench in his hand and stepped closer. "Hey," he said softly. "You can't stay out here." She flinched. "I'm not here to hurt you," he murmured. "But you're coming with me." And that single choice changed everything. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. Rain lashed against the harbor, each drop slicing through the cold air like shattered glass. It was past midnight, and most of the dockworkers had long gone home. Only Caleb Morgan remained, his shoulders heavy beneath his soaked flannel jacket, the smell of salt and diesel thick in the air. He'd pulled a double shift again, anything to keep the bills paid and his little girl asleep under a warm blanket at home. He was about to lock up when movement caught his eye near the far edge of the pier, a flicker of motion under the broken lamppost. At first, he thought it was a stray dog. But as lightning flashed across the harbor, he saw her. A woman, barefoot and drenched, knees pulled to her chest, hair plastered to her face. She looked terrified, not just of the storm, but of being seen. Caleb hesitated for only a second before crossing the slick boards. "Hey," he called over the roar of the rain. "You can't stay out here." She flinched like the sound had burned her. "Please. I'm fine. Just leave me alone." He stopped a few feet away, careful not to startle her further. "You'll freeze to death before morning." Her eyes darted up, wide, hollow, desperate. "I don't need help." Caleb took off his jacket, the fabric dripping as he held it out. "Then don't think of it as help. Think of it as me not wanting to find someone frozen tomorrow." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, trembling, she reached out, her fingers brushing his hand, cold as the rain itself. "Thank you," she whispered. "What's your name?" he asked softly. Her lips parted, voice barely audible through the storm. "Harper." Caleb nodded once. "All right, Harper. Let's get you warm." And as thunder cracked overhead, she followed him into the dark, unaware that this small act of kindness would change both their lives forever. Caleb's apartment sat just above the docks, a narrow second-floor space that always smelled faintly of salt, coffee, and old wood. The lights flickered when he flipped the switch, revealing a small kitchen, a worn couch, and a few drawings taped proudly to the fridge, blue skies, stick figures, and a little girl's handwriting that read, "Me and Daddy." Harper stood near the door, shivering despite the blanket he'd handed her. Her eyes kept darting to the rain-streaked window, as if someone might still be watching. "You can sit," Caleb said, setting a mug of tea on the table. "You're safe here." She didn't move. "You shouldn't have brought me. You don't know who I am." He shrugged, unbothered. "You looked like someone who needed a place to stop running." That made her look up, and for a moment, he saw something beyond the fear. Exhaustion. Shame. Relief. She sat down slowly, wrapping her hands around the steaming mug like it was the first warmth she'd felt in days. After a long silence, she whispered, "He's looking for me. My boss. My fiancé. They're the same man." Caleb leaned forward, brow furrowed. "What happened?" Her voice cracked. "He framed me. Said I stole company money. Transferred everything into my name. I have nothing to prove my innocence except," she hesitated. "Except a locker at the harbor. I hid documents there before I ran." Caleb's jaw tightened. He'd seen people broken before, by lies, debt, bad luck, but this was different. "If he did this to you, we'll figure it out," he said quietly. Harper shook her head. "No one believes me anymore." "I do." She looked at him, startled by the calm conviction in his tone. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside that tiny apartment, something fragile and human began to thaw. For the first time all night, Harper stopped shaking. The storm had eased by dawn, leaving the harbor wrapped in fog. Pale light bled through the curtains of Caleb's apartment, turning everything soft and gray. He stirred awake on the couch, his back aching, the faint smell of coffee already drifting from the kitchen. Harper stood by the stove, wearing one of his old flannel shirts that nearly swallowed her. The sight startled him more than he expected. She looked different in daylight, calmer, almost peaceful, though her eyes still carried that bruised edge of sleepless nights. "You didn't have to make breakfast," Caleb said, sitting up. She gave a small, polite smile. "You saved me from hypothermia. The least I can do is burn your eggs." A quiet laugh escaped him. It was the first time she tried humor since stepping into his life. "You're doing fine," he said, watching her flip a pancake that somehow folded in half. Just then, small footsteps padded down the hall. Grace appeared, hair tangled, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She froze at the sight of Harper. "Daddy? Who's that?" Caleb's voice softened. "This is Miss Harper. She's a friend." Harper crouched to meet the little girl's gaze. "Hi, Grace. I like your bunny." Grace hesitated, then smiled shyly. "His name's Mr. Hop." That broke the ice. Within minutes, the kitchen filled with chatter, Grace talking about her school drawings, Harper listening like every word mattered. Caleb watched them quietly, something warm rising in his chest he hadn't felt in years. But peace never lasted long. The morning news played softly from the small TV on the counter, the anchor's voice slicing through the calm. Police continue their search for Harper Lane, a former executive accused of embezzling nearly $2 million from Cormac Industries. Authorities warn she may be dangerous. Harper's hands trembled, the spatula clattering against the counter. Grace flinched at the sound. Caleb muted the TV instantly, meeting Harper's panicked eyes. "They're lying," she whispered, voice cracking. "I know," he said firmly. "And we'll prove it." Outside, the fog thickened again, swallowing the morning light, as if the world itself was holding its breath for what came next. By midday, the rain had returned, soft but steady, washing the docks in a dull silver haze. Caleb stood at the window, staring out across the harbor where cranes moved like tired giants. Behind him, Harper paced restlessly, her voice low but urgent. "They'll be looking for me here." "He knows I'd come back to the docks," she said, running a hand through her damp hair. Caleb turned. "Then we don't wait for him. We get what you hid and take it somewhere safe." She froze, shaking her head. "No. It's too dangerous." He met her gaze steadily. "You think working these docks is safe? I've faced worse weather than whatever he sends." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You don't even know what's in that locker." "I don't need to," he said simply. "I believe you." That silenced her. For months, no one had said those words, not friends, not family, not the police. Just this quiet dockworker who'd risked everything without asking for anything in return. A few hours later, under the cover of thick fog, they made their way back to the harbor. Caleb's boots splashed through puddles as he led Harper between rows of shipping containers toward the storage lockers. "This is it," she whispered, stopping before a rusted blue door. Her fingers trembled as she fit the small key into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a single metal box wrapped in plastic. Caleb pulled it out and opened it carefully. Inside were stacks of papers, bank statements, wire transfers, ledgers. His eyes widened. This proves he moved the money himself." Harper nodded, tears threatening. "If we can get this to the right people, he's finished." But before Caleb could speak, the echo of tires screeched against wet pavement. A black SUV turned into the lot, headlights slicing through the mist. Harper's face went white. It's him, she whispered. Caleb shoved the folder into his jacket. Run. They bolted between the containers as the SUV doors slammed open behind them, voices shouting, footsteps closing in. Rain hammered harder now, drumming against metal and concrete, but Caleb didn't slow. Keep going, he shouted. For the first time, Harper didn't argue, she trusted him completely. The fog swallowed everything, the waves, the footsteps, even the shouting behind them. Caleb's hand tightened around Harper's as they sprinted down the narrow service lane between the stacked cargo containers. The rain turned the wooden planks slick, each step a gamble. Behind them, flashlights cut through the mist. There, a voice barked, deep and commanding. Harper's breath came in ragged gasps. He brought his men. I figured, Caleb muttered, steering her left toward the maintenance warehouse. Stay low. They ducked inside the open bay, the smell of oil and seawater thick in the air. Caleb shut the side door quietly and flipped off the lights. Only the rhythmic dripping from the roof broke the silence. Harper pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Why are you doing this? She whispered. You could have left me. Caleb crouched near the window, watching the men fan out across the dock. Because you're not guilty. And because my daughter's asleep upstairs, believing her dad does the right thing. Her throat tightened. He'll ruin you if he finds out you helped me. Then I'll make sure he doesn't. He glanced toward the back wall, an old maintenance ladder leading to the catwalk above. Up there. Go. They climbed quickly, footsteps barely echoing. Below, two men entered the warehouse, beams of light slicing through the dark. Harper froze halfway up, heart pounding. Caleb reached down and steadied her hand, his whisper calm and certain. One step at a time. Trust me. When they reached the top, they crouched behind a stack of crates, breathless. Through the window, Caleb spotted the SUV idling near the pier, and a tall man standing in front of it, phone pressed to his ear, face hard as stone. Harper's whisper trembled. That's him, Nathan Cormick. Caleb studied the man's silhouette for a long moment. Then that's the man who's going to learn what happens when good people stop being afraid. For a moment, thunder rolled over the harbor, deep, rumbling, almost like a warning. Harper glanced at him. What now? Caleb met her eyes, calm but resolute. Now we finish this. Together. They waited until the men below scattered, searching every corner of the docks. Then Caleb led Harper across the catwalk toward a maintenance hatch that opened to the outer pier. Rain hammered down again, heavier now, blurring everything into streaks of gray and silver. Where are we going? Harper shouted over the storm. To the harbor office, Caleb said. There's an old fax terminal still hooked to the city's network. If we can get those files through, your story won't die quietly. She hesitated. And if we don't make it? He looked back, eyes steady even in the chaos. Then we try again tomorrow. But we don't stop. They reached the office just as headlights swept across the lot, the SUV circling back. Caleb shoved the door open, flicked the breaker, and the lights flickered to life. He spread the soaked papers across the desk, hands moving fast. Give me the first set of transfers. Harper handed him the folder, fingers trembling. Her pulse thudded in her ears as he worked the old machine to life, feeding the documents through one by one. Outside, footsteps pounded closer. Caleb, she cried, panic in her voice. Almost there, he said through clenched teeth. The fax machine groaned, beeping with each successful send. Come on, come on. The door burst open. Nathan Cormick stood in the frame, his expensive suit drenched, his smile cold and deliberate. You think anyone will believe a dock rat and a thief? Caleb stepped between them. They'll believe the truth. Nathan pulled a pistol from his coat, the barrel glinting under the harsh light. You don't even know what you're risking. Caleb didn't flinch. I've already risked everything that matters. My daughter's asleep in a world where people like you win because no one fights back. That ends tonight. For a tense moment, the only sound was the rain hammering the roof, and then the fax machine beeped one final time, printing its confirmation, transmission complete. Nathan's face twisted. He lunged forward, but Harper grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and slammed it into his arm. The gun skidded across the floor. Caleb kicked it away and pulled her behind him. Sirens wailed in the distance, police, drawn by the alarm system Nathan's men had tripped. Caleb exhaled, voice low. It's over. Harper looked at him, rain and tears mingling on her face. No, it's just beginning. 2 days later, the harbor was crawling with police and reporters. Nathan Cormick had been arrested on multiple fraud and obstruction charges. But even as the headlines cleared Harper's name, the aftermath wasn't easy. She hadn't slept. Not really. Freedom after fear felt unreal, like stepping out of a storm only to find the air too still. Caleb found her sitting on the dock's edge that evening, legs dangling above the water, the wind tugging at her hair. He brought 2 paper cups of coffee, setting one beside her. You should be celebrating, he said quietly. She gave a soft, tired laugh. You ever been so relieved you don't know what to do with it? He nodded, staring out at the lights dancing on the water. Every day after I buried my wife. Relief she wasn't suffering anymore, and guilt for feeling it. Her gaze shifted to him, eyes soft. You lost her. 5 years ago. Cancer. He took a slow sip of coffee. Grace doesn't remember much. I try to fill the silence. Harper's voice trembled. I thought my life was over when I ran. But maybe it was just, waiting for a reason to start again. Caleb smiled faintly. Sometimes that's all any of us are doing. Waiting for the right knock at the door. She turned to him. You didn't just open a door, Caleb. You pulled me out of the dark. For a moment, the world shrank to the sound of waves lapping against the pier and the faint hum of a cargo ship in the distance. Then she whispered, I'm not running anymore. He met her gaze, steady and quiet. Good. Because neither am I. A month later, the storm was nothing but a memory. The harbor gleamed under the soft gold of spring sunlight. Caleb's small repair shop had grown busier than ever, partly because of the news story, partly because people trusted a man who helped without asking why. That afternoon, Harper walked in holding a lunch bag and a hesitant smile. Grace spotted her first. Miss Harper, she squealed, racing from the workbench to hug her. Daddy says you're learning to fix engines. Harper laughed, kneeling to meet the girl's eyes. Trying my best. I owe your dad a few lessons in courage. Grace grinned. You can pay him in cookies. Caleb looked up from under the hood of a boat engine, grease smudged on his cheek. She's serious, you know. Harper placed the lunch down beside him. Then I guess I'm already in debt. They ate together by the open garage doors, sunlight spilling across the floor. The air smelled of salt, oil, and something like peace. Harper pulled a folded envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. What's this? Caleb asked. An offer, she said. I'm starting a new maritime charity, helping dockworkers and single parents get back on their feet. You'd run operations. Fair pay. Honest work. It's what you already do, just, with a bigger reach. He stared at her for a long moment. You're serious? She smiled softly. You saved my life, Caleb. Let's spend the rest of it helping others. Outside, Grace pointed toward the water where the sunset painted the sky in hues of fire and gold. Look, Daddy, the storm's gone. Caleb glanced at Harper, his voice low but sure. Yeah, he said. But I think it left something good behind. As the first harbor lights flickered to life, the three of them stood side by side, a man, a woman, and a little girl, proof that even in a world built on storms, kindness can rebuild the shore. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.